All right, Brian, over to you.
Thank you, Francesca, and thank you all for joining us for this first of a series of webinars talking about eConstruction. This first eConstruction webinar will introduce you to the topic, and the introductions will occur for many of our state DOT leaders in the use of eConstruction. My name's Brian Colley. I'm the Construction Management Team Leader with the Federal Highway Administration Headquarters Office. I'm one of the Federal Highway champions in deploying this technology through Everyday Counts 3's efforts. Like I mentioned, you're going to have some great presenters here today. We have Brad Wiefrick, who's the Deputy Chief Engineer from Michigan DOT. He began his career about 20 years ago at Michigan DOT as a road designer. Brad has served on many AASHTO subcommittees, including Design, Joint Pipe Operation Committee, and participates with the Transportation Asset Management Council. If you'll notice also on the various slides, you'll see that this technology, eConstruction, is also an AASHTO innovation initiative. The states have grabbed hold of it, and they are also wanting to deploy this nationally from that perspective. Doug Martin will be sharing with us his experience with Florida DOT. Doug Martin started his career in 1973 as a construction field inspector and worked his way up through the construction office as a systems engineer. His career has taken in a gamut from construction through design, estimating, tolling systems, financial work, program allocations, and project management, and back to construction. Doug is a great person and has lots of experience with eConstruction and helped us in the production with Florida DOT of the eConstruction how-to manual that's available on the Federal Highway eConstruction website. And then we have Cliff Farr, a very energetic fireball from Michigan DOT. He's the construction technology manager and has been responsible for construction-related business process improvements, data management, and field operations for Michigan DOT since 1985. He is currently Michigan DOT's construction business owner of AASHTO product construction materials web applications and heading up Michigan's eConstruction efforts. And Francesca Meyer, she is a great person, one of our consultants from PB, who is helping us organize these workshops as well as the one of our regional workshops in the Midwest for eConstruction. Please, I'd like to emphasize with you at this time, if you have any questions during our presentation, please post them in the pod off to the left. We will address them at the end of all of our presentations. Like I mentioned, today is the first of a series of webinars. The next webinar will be held on January 20th, Building the Policy and Technology Base for eConstruction, followed by one in February, Piloting eConstruction, and then another one in March that will focus on contractors and consultants and how they've adopted it and how they embrace it and use it. And then we will pause for a few months, and next winter, 2016 to 2017, we'll have 4 more webinars. Let me emphasize with you the importance of participating in the polls. You'll see them placed in here in very strategic locations to help us understand who's in the audience and where we are nationally in the deployment of this technology. Please complete these polls as we collect this information, and we'll be sharing them on the eConstruction websites for any use after the webinar too.
Thank you, everybody. Just remember, you might need to scroll down on the poll on the left to see all of the options. I apologize for that, but this does resize the this based on your screen size. All right, I'll just give you 5 more seconds with this. And back to the presentation. Thank you.
This is Brian again. I'd like to give you an introduction to eConstruction and what we're doing to help accelerate the deployment of this nationally. What is eConstruction? In summary, it's the collection, review, approval, and distribution of highway construction contract documents in a paperless environment. It has many different elements associated with it. It touches the electronic capturing of construction data, whether that's downloading files from construction equipment that has AMG on it that's providing you information, or intelligent compaction that's providing you a stiffness type measurement as it's being operated. It's also the electronic submission of construction contract documents, whether it be the estimate to the actual award, and signing those documents and using them in an electronic environment. A couple more elements associated with this. You have the use of different tablets on the project site for automated real-time, collection of data, whether that's taking pictures of material certs or scanning them on the project when the material shows up on the truck, or recording video imagery, or communicating back to your central office to the expert associated with this particular element on the bridge that you need your input with. And it's doing this all in a real-time environment where the contractor has portions of this electronic process that they interact with, material suppliers do, and the state does also. But it's all in a secure environment so that you know where the documents are and you have reliability associated with them. Looking across the nation, and this map is evolving as we're holding peer exchanges and states are really grabbing hold of the eConstruction process. But what this map kind of shows you is some of what we're classifying as national leaders, some states that have constructed at least 2 or more projects using the eConstruction process, states that are really interested in it, that are exploring it, either participating in peer exchanges or asking questions, emailing, having different dialogues, or we have some discussing states that are they're watching it, they're very keen and interested in it. But this kind of gives you this map an idea of where you can call and get help from. Where are our lead states? And I have to say, I'd say within the next month or 2, we'll be adding several more lead states onto this, as many of the states have really grabbed hold of this technology and they've been piloting it this past summer. Now the question always comes up when you're trying to move a new technology is, why? What's the return on investment? I'd like to emphasize a project that the state of Washington, Minnesota, and Texas DOT recently completed. This project had 3 significant findings that I captured from it. One being, over the piloting of these devices and using it on a project, they saved about 1 hour and 45 minutes, the inspectors did, per day on using this electronic process. So they picked up an extra hour and 45 minutes that they could spend inspecting the project by using these devices. And the question comes, where did that come from? Where did they find that time? Well, where that came from is not having to run back to the project trailer to get a piece of paper or to copy something, or having to go back to the project trailer and now type in their diary again in electronic format, or put a stamp on an envelope to mail a document off. Where it came from is those enhancements and efficiencies in being able to process these documents and these interactions and communicate in real time in the field. They also found, while they were doing this research project, that the inspectors were collecting almost 3 times more information than what they had been collecting before. They have the cameras built into their devices, They have audio recording. They have video recording. They're more apt to take those pictures and record that information and store it for recreation if you need to bring it up later on a project. One concern that's been coming up across the field also is how long does it take for some of our inspectors to adopt this technology? I got some inspectors that really don't use their email very much and some that don't even use it. Are they going to use it, or is there a substitute? Well, when you give them this eConstruction type technologies, what was found is after about 3 days of use of the technology, they've grabbed hold of it. They understand it. They understand how to type. They understand the voice recognition to put the information into an electronic diary, or how to electronically sign a document and process it, or look at the plans on a screen rather than going back to the project office to pull up a set of paper plans. These are some great findings that came out of this study. In addition, you'll hear a little bit later on from Michigan and Florida DOT. They've been doing a little calculations also, trying to come up with a dollar savings. You'll see later on in their presentations, they're seeing about $40,000 a year per project savings on moving to eConstruction, or electronic project management systems. From a national perspective, we're also interested in that dollar amount and time savings associated with eConstruction, and our Turner Fairbanks Highway Research Center is collecting that information for us at this time. To help us in this national deployment, we talked about our webinars, but we're also organizing regional workshops that are helping us with the national deployment. We've been working with the great state of Utah, UDOT, to organize a workshop with them that will focus on eConstruction, as well as they're going to be bringing in some both 3, 4, 5 XD modeling into a 2-day workshop. They tentatively have the dates right now of February 23rd and 24th in the Salt Lake area. We've been working with Michigan DOT, another great state, one of our leaders in eConstruction. They're looking at spring of 2016, possibly holding a eConstruction workshop in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And then we've also been working with Virginia DOT, another outstanding state, and they're looking at organizing a 2-day workshop focusing on eConstruction, 3D modeling, and they're looking at Norfolk, Virginia, fall of 2016 timeframe. More information will follow as related to these and how you can register associated with the workshops. Another tool that we've been using to help in the deployment of eConstruction is holding peer exchanges, where we're pairing up an exploring state who wants to learn more with one of our lead states. Such as Oregon and Michigan DOT had a peer exchange in March. Massachusetts and Florida DOT had one in September. Their reports are on our Federal Highway eConstruction website. You're welcome, and please look at them. Arkansas and West Virginia just had a peer exchange. We're finalizing the report, and I'll get that posted. Texas and Montana is meeting right now. And you can see the others that are in the queue, and we're waiting to organize them. Kind of how the process occurs is we have an application form, and we do some various interviews with the exploring states that want to learn more about eConstruction. And we try to understand more of them so we can pair them up with a lead state that has similar software technologies, programs, so that they can relate to each other and share some lessons learned as they advance through this process. Please, if you're interested in one of these peer exchanges, work with your local Federal Highway Division office and email me, Brian Colley, and I'd love to help you out. Some of these peer exchanges you'll notice are physical ones in person, but we also have some virtual peer exchanges also we're working on. And with that said, in conclusion, please participate in our polls.
Looks like the response rate is slowing down, so I'm going to count you down from 3 and then bring the presentation back up. 3, 2, 1. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation in the poll. And now we'd like to introduce Mr. Weifrick.
Go ahead, Brad.
I'm not seeing my slides.
Give it a second. We're seeing them, and I can advance for you. So go ahead if you want.
Okay, we'll go ahead. Hey, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone today about eConstruction. It's been very exciting times here at Michigan DOT. The objective of my discussion today, though, is to really give you a perspective more from the AASHTO state standpoint. Slide. The purpose of the AASHTO Innovation Initiative Committee is to identify and champion the implementation of technologies that are likely to yield significant benefits to industry. AASHTO believes that eConstruction is one of those technologies and that it's ready to use. AASHTO has partnered with industry to select eConstruction as a focus and has partnered with the FHWA through Everyday Counts to deploy eConstruction nationally. It is through the AASHTO partnership with MDOT that we're developing and hosting this webinar series. Back in September, the AASHTO, AGC, and ARTBA issued a joint position statement titled Improving Project Management Through the Use of Technology. In this joint position statement, the three organizations shared their commitment to adopting eConstruction. Some of the technology being pursued nationally includes the transfer of electronic plans and specifications and special provisions, software applications for field inspection and data collection for mobile devices, data hosting services like clouds and share sites and virtual rooms, electronic review and approval of processes including digital signatures, communication tools, email, social media, etc. Radio frequency identification tags, RFID for tracking resources, and electronic as-built drawings and quality assurance records for asset management. The strong industry partnership to support and deploy eConstruction is why we're moving so quickly. Slide. eConstruction offers improved collaboration between contractors, subcontractors, and suppliers for the DOTs, which leads to significant benefits in three categories. First, time and cost incentives, basically getting rid of the paper trail. We're going to save time gathering data, writing documentation, and exchanging the documents with multiple parties. We'll also save time waiting for approvals, leading to faster project completements. We'll eliminate the physical cost of paper and printing and mailing documents, and physically less storing space for the documents. And we'll also save in financing costs through faster payments to the contractor and faster reimbursements from the federal highway. Second, obviously, we're expecting quality to improve. We'll have a more accurate account of what's happening in the field. Will enable our inspectors to spend more time on the job site capturing, documenting, and storing the observations in real time. We'll have more transparent construction administration process through a centralized document management system along with digital signatures. And we'll have more consistent and predictable approach to decision making through standardized reports and formats and automated distribution workflows. Third, there will obviously be benefits with real-time accessibility of the data. We will have access to all necessary documents anytime, anywhere, through mobile applications and secure document management systems that also prevent data loss. will have access to the most current versions of this information through a single source of truth. And we'll have more secure data, especially with digital signatures. And one of the interesting things is disaster recovery. Honestly, not something I would have thought of right away, but this is all data that we will be storing and backing up, and in the event of some sort of disaster, natural or otherwise, we'll have that information available. And we're going to be able to integrate the data that we've collected into other core systems and really help save that data and use it for a full life cycle in an asset management realm. Next slide. Technology implementation is realized as a significant challenge for the DOTs. The Joint Committee identified some areas where cooperation between AASHTO, the Federal Highway Administration, and the construction industry could lead to faster and more seamless adoption of eConstruction, and recommends the 5 following keys. First is enhance and expand electronic administration platforms. Address compatibility issues with mobile administration applications such as AASHTO Site Manager. Expand the sharing of electronic 3D models. Compile a list of best practices for using mobile devices in the field, and develop protocols for electronic signatures across the department and throughout the eConstruction process. Slide. It really has been an exciting time here at MDOT. We do estimate that we've saved approximately $12 million in annual cost savings, and that's cost savings to the DOT and to contractors. Roughly 6 million pieces of paper are saved by using electronic data storage, and that's on our $1 billion construction program that we have approximately annually. And we've been able to reduce the average contract modification processing time down from 30 days to just 3 days. Huge incentive. We've been able to increase the percentage of time that field staff is making observations on the job site, keeping them in the field where they need to be. And we've increased employee and stakeholder engagement. This has really driven some enthusiasm from our employees, and they've really taken ownership in the process and have been the ones that have helped advance the ideas and making the process even more efficient. Cliff Farr, I think, was described as a fireball. He will be discussing a lot more of this stuff in detail later. But MDOT is just one of many agencies that have demonstrated that eConstruction has a number of benefits. It's a work in progress, and we're going to capture the benefits while continuing to develop new methods. Thank you all for your time, folks. Yep, over to Doug.
All right, I'm going to count you down from 3 and then bring the presentation back up.
Everyone.
But I will be bringing the
I
polls
would
back
say
up during the Q&A
hello from
at the
sunny
end.
Florida, but
And a
it's
reminder
clouding up
to
outside and
please
getting
put
ready to
your
rain.
questions in the questions
anyway,
pod. We don't want to lose anybody's question
so how did
in the
Florida get
chat.
started in all this?
All right, going away in 3,
Well,
2, 1.
at FDOT, we have a group at the highest level of DOT, including the chief engineer, that are called the innovators.
All right, over to you, Doug.
And they take ideas from all over the department from different areas, from inspectors, from design, from planning, from everyone. One of the ideas that were submitted was to submit all construction documents electronically. This idea got promoted and was approved for research. Then the team was formed, and members from all over the state are included on the team, experts in every area. As they started peeling the onion and looking at what it would take to do that, it evolved into what we're calling a paperless environment. And at the same time, I mean, this started back in December of 2012, and at approximately the same time, this nationwide push for eConstruction was happening at the same time, so it was ironically a timely thing that happened with Florida. Our present conditions before we started on the endeavor was that construction documentation takes many forms. There's all kinds of information that comes in from the field. I guess everybody out there that's listening knows that. You have submittals from contractors and designers and, all kinds of information. And in most cases, when it comes in from the contractors and the CEIs and the administrators, it has to be signed, some of them. Others don't, but because it has to be going to multiple copies, multiple people, they wind up making copies of it or sending additional copies of it around. And what's really disturbing is whenever documents have to be signed by multiple people, you have to print the document, fill it out, sign it, scan it in, send it to the next person. That person prints it out, fills out any part of the form that he needs to fill out, signs it, scans it back in, and emails it, or puts it in an envelope and sends it in overnight mail to someone else. And when this has to go to multiple recipients, the paper volume just multiplies and doubles. Turnaround for approvals, because of all of the paper pushing that we do, is kind of slow. Sometimes it takes a week to get something approved. In other cases, we have people that need to sign a document that are 50 miles away from the project, and they assign a special runner to take a vehicle and go get this document signed by that person. So we're talking huge expense. So what do we want to do differently? We want to change an antiquated interaction to a paperless methodology and get the benefit of saving the time and effort and the money for pushing all the paper around, and use the tools that are available out there for everyone to utilize. And the challenges that we faced along the way. Which one of the documents require signatures, and are there procedures that we can modify that would reduce that requirement? We need to get the public motivated to get on board. That means the CEIs, the designers, the contractors, the subcontractors, everybody out there. Another thing is finding out what's legal. If we go paperless, do we have to use digital signatures, or how do we do that without creating multiple copies of paper? Well, there was a Uniform Electronic Transaction Act passed in 2000, the year 2000, somewhere along there, and it's been ratified by 47 states that gives you guidance in how to do what we're trying to do. The statute in Florida is called Chapter 668, Section 50. And most likely, if you're one of those 47 states, you can find that statute somewhere in your state, not the 668, but whatever they called it there. Another challenge is storage. We had a report from an interview with a CEI firm the other day that they're actually printing copies of electronic files and putting them in boxes and putting them in storage units because it's a requirement of our procedures. So we're addressing that, and we're going to try to modify it so that they don't have to do that anymore. Why do you store things in multiple places if you have it electronically stored and available for everybody, which is EDMS? In order to use digital signatures, it costs an individual approximately $100 a year, and that certificate's good for 2 years, and you can sign as many documents as you want. Some certificate authorities charge more, and they have a different pricing structure, and you can sign only 10,000 documents or something like that. But typically, it's around $100 for 2 years. The savings that Brian mentioned before, I think Michigan and Florida both approach this calculation similarly, which is a very hard thing to do when you're trying to look out in the future and figure out how much all this is going to save us. And we came to approximately the same amount, saving 1.5 hours per day for CEI, and we averaged the salaries across all of the people that we're paying out there. And we prorated the $45,000 annual per contract to 500 active projects that we would have going at one time during the year. And it equates to over $22 million you can save by elimination of paper and saving time and money using electronic devices. So what have we done to get where we are today? As you know, we talked about the forms. We have 140 plus of them. So the team poured through all the forms and bubbled to the top the ones that were the low-hanging fruit that we could push out of the way and go ahead and make those electronic. And we're still working on that list, but we're almost done with it. Another thing we did was to notify the stakeholders. And in order to do that, we joined three associations together into a memo or a memorandum of agreement between all the presidents. One association was FICE, which is the Florida Institute of Civil Engineers, and we have FTBA, Florida Transportation Builders Association, and also FDOT. And by putting those three associations together, you touch almost everybody in the state that does transportation building contracts. Anyway, the three chiefs of those associations signed the memorandum of agreement, and we all agree to work together to move forward. Phase 2 of the plan that we kicked off was to begin outfitting our people with the ability to sign documents electronically. So we started buying digital certificates to give to our people. And we also, with the memo, got to buy off from the industry. And we also created a website with the information that the contractors could go to and learn how to obtain their own digital certificates. And we hope to, in the near future, do a webinar similar to this one to do some demonstrations on how to utilize them. Phase 3 was to create a place where, while a contract's being built or a construction job's being built, that all of the people on the contract can collaborate together and share the information easily. So what we did is we did a procurement, and we did it with an ITN, which is an invitation to negotiate. And we had like 11 companies bid or come and bring a solution to the table for us to evaluate. And out of that 11, the one that we chose brought to the table a dynamically configurable environment which they would host in the cloud. And it's found that it's the engine behind all of it is SharePoint 2013. So, for example, if we have 500 contracts running through the year, and we're paying this company $125 a month for every contract that we're hosting, then our annual cost is probably about $800,000 to have the thing hosted and cover all of our contracts. We did some pilot projects, and they're still ongoing right now using the iPad Air. The security and the robustness of the devices are being evaluated. But the biggest benefit of having those machines out in the field is our inspectors and our project administrators have every piece of information they need on their project right at their fingertips. In the past, we'd have trunks full of plan sets for each project that you're managing and things like that, and specification manuals, and so we just, with a flip of a switch, get rid of all of that and put it all on an electronic device. And I'm telling you, the younger people out in the field, the inspectors, are really excited about that. Along with all of the IT and the hardware and the things like that that are being changed, the policies and procedures are being evaluated and modified to also accommodate what we're trying to do. We're moving the as-built plan creation to paperless and using Bluebeam Review to do the markups. Our goal is to be completely paperless by July 1st of 2016, and every contract that comes through the letting process will be paperless. This just is a picture of one of our collaboration sites, and the collaboration site was completely designed by our internal people and simply hosted by the provider. With that, I think that's about where we are in Florida.
Thanks, Doug. So we have some more polls.
Oh, thank you. I just sent you a little note about that.
Right, I'm going to count you down from 3.
Okay, greetings everyone. My name is
back
Cliff
up.
Farr
Thank
here in
you.
Michigan, as previously
3,
introduced.
2,
I do consider it an honor to be able to speak to you today. When we got involved with Brian Colley and his team and Francesca and
all right, over to you,
the team
Cliff.
that's pulling all this together, I just said, you know what, we're kind of busy, but let's see what this is all about. And when I got with them and Brian and the team, their heart and their passion and their vision was exactly the same as ours, and so this has turned out to be just a wonderful thing for Michigan to be able to participate on a national basis like this. Okay. Just a little reminder why, just to give you a sense of volume. Lots of paper. These are all taken in various areas here in Michigan. And plan sets, this going paperless. And this is actually the way we got started, was because we had one of the executives at MDOT that came down and took 3 of us over to meet with the industry, and he told us right then, he said, listen, I don't want any more telephone calls from legislators, from associations, from contractors about them not being paid on time because a material document had been lost somewhere. The contractor said, I sent it in. MDOT said, no, you didn't. Yes, we did. And this argument's been going on for ages. He said, I don't want this to happen anymore. And that's how we got started. We said, hold it. If we can go paperless with our material documentation, with the audit trail and everything, so that there's no more telling stories, what about everything else? And so that's how Michigan got started and go paperless. And it's not just in construction, it's design as well. Design has been a huge portion of our success on the construction side with going paperless. There's lots and lots of people involved. You have to contact a lot of people. And just for the sake of giving a perspective on volume, we've got this slide, and I just threw together a list to give you some perspective on all the different people that touch these documents in one way or another. Construction auditors, construction surveyors, prime and subcontractors, design support during construction, environmental support during construction, estimators, executives, FHWA, inspectors, eConstruction support and managers, geotech support during construction, all the materials areas, the materials support during construction, the suppliers, the producers, the fabricators, all the project controllers, the resident construction engineer and their management staff, local government agencies, construction consultants, quality assurance and quality control personnel, pavement historical management staff, contract staff, finance and payment staff. So the list is pretty impressive. Safety support, structure support during construction, subcontractor tracking during construction, traffic support during construction, utilities and utility companies. So you can see that the numbers that you've been given so far today, it sounds impressive, but when you start looking at the grassroots of all of it, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So instead of having one document and a multitude of different areas with different people with different focuses on that construction process, all having their own file cabinet, now we've got one document in one spot that everybody knows where it is. Everybody can take a look at an audit trail to see if say it's a change order that needs to be approved, who's got it, how come, they can check to see what the delays are. When you look at that scope, and now we've got one document instead of multiple, I always say 14, but I bet you it's more like 50 in a lot of cases, amongst all these different business areas. It's pretty impressive. And that's why we were talking about some of the excitement. Brad was talking about some of the excitement in Michigan, and it's absolutely true. Right from the people in the field, right through the governor who came to visit us, everybody's really excited about this is a game changer. So for us in Michigan, it's a combination of several automated processes resulting in paperless construction, and mobility is now key. What this means is that we already had the basic components in place. Our daily work reports or inspector daily work reports have been automated in Michigan since 1993, and so what that means is they had a predecessor to a laptop that was in the field, and they're actually keying the quantities so that we were electronic from 1993 till today from the construction site through cutting the contractor's check. That allowed us, and in those situations, what would happen is that the inspector would print out their daily report, and now instead of printing out that daily report on paper, they print it to a PDF and they post it in our document management, electronic document management system. So we've had the essential, what we consider essential starting components before we ever got into looking at the paperless, and we started looking at the paperless and says, oh boy, are we ever fortunate that we got some of these other pieces already in place. We did run these four pilots in 2012, and this is where we cut our teeth. We did, well, I'm going to be talking a lot about the pilots, and as you can see here, and Doug had mentioned, and maybe Chess had mentioned it previously, learn more on webinar number 3 when I'll really dive into the piloting of eConstruction here in Michigan and what it took to get things going. And that webinar is going to be on February 17th. But safe to say we got like $135 million worth of work here. And we learned an awful lot so that we had the confidence to start rolling it out statewide. So where are we today? We've got, these are the numbers. I don't need to read you the numbers, but we are paperless on trunk line contracts for every letting since October 3rd, 2014. If it's a trunk line contract, meaning it's not a local agency contract, we're just now starting to roll those out and pilot with those folks. But everything's from October 3rd of 2014 is paperless on trunk line contracts. And so these numbers reflect some of the numbers of users and how many contracts. We've got 412 contracts that are paperless right now or have been paperless. These numbers do include the pilot contracts. And before October 3rd, 2014, all of our construction offices had at least one paperless construction contract. Some had more than one. But so this number, some $1.5 billion in paperless, is everything that we've done to date, including what's live out there today. And obviously, we're very much participating in the AASHTO Innovation Initiative, and that's now melded with Everyday Counts Initiative. So we got one seamless approach to going paperless on a national basis, which is very much efficient. Bottom part of this is just some of the folks that helped us on the contractor side. That was really important for us to get started, is to get their buy-in before we ever started really talking turkey on some of this stuff. Want to learn more? We do have some videos out there that have been put together, and they say picture's worth 1,000 words, a video's worth even more. If you're trying to explain to somebody what this is and what the impact is to the field, because quite often when we think of eConstruction, we think about the paperless stuff, rightfully so. And on my next presentation, I'm going to talk about how it just expands way beyond just the paperless stuff. But this mobility factor, we say eConstruction is paperless construction, but it's mobility in its biggest way. And that's just huge for us. Conclusion is we're just really excited. Brad had talked earlier about the data aspect, and what this is helping us do is break down a lot of the silos so that when we get fully implemented to that data side, we're hitting the ground running. And so this is just a great precursor to what's coming in the future. And there's just a lot of discussion and a lot of passion, a lot of great ideas that are floating around. My conclusion is this is an absolute game changer. We got stuff on the horizon that we don't need to talk about now because we're talking about eConstruction, but eConstruction is an absolute game changer. It's got to be the biggest improvement in efficiencies on the construction side potentially in the history of our industry for the DOTs. And that's my presentation. Thank you for listening. You're welcome, Chase.
Thanks, Cliff. So these are the last these are the last set of polls. After these polls, we'll go into the Q&A session. And then once we get going with the Q&A session, I will start to cycle the polls back up, and you can change your options or respond if you didn't get a chance to before. Okay, while you're responding, I'll get us going with the first question. With me while I make this big enough to see.
It's 4G, and
Okay, it says, are the
we haven't
states that
really
have
run into
already
that problem,
implemented the real-time transfer of
I
files
think
using
Cliff can probably
4G on the
verify that
tablets?
the
Being from Montana,
mobile
we work in
device
many areas with little to
applications
no
that are
cell phone
available
coverage, which wouldn't allow for the savings in
allow you to
time per
work
day for
offline, and then
inspectors.
when they get
Are
back
there any other
to an
transfer
area where
methods that are
you're
being used?
online again,
I'm
they
going
sync
to point
themselves
that
back
one
up.
first to Doug.
Yes, that's exactly right,
Doug,
Doug,
are
and
you using
that's the
4G
way
in Florida, or are you
that's the
using
way
Wi-Fi on your
these
site?
remote connectivities have to work. But I do have a resource here in Michigan, because we do have areas in the Porcupine Mountains of the UP, and even some places like in the Thumb and the Lower Peninsula, that we do have connectivity issues. But I do have a resident expert on remote connectivity and piping that signal in. So if you'd like to send me an email at farrc@michigan.gov, I will get you that contact information, because we don't want to leave these guys out there for weeks on end without syncing up, right? So that is an issue, and it's a great question. You're welcome. Okay. Alrighty.
Thanks, Cliff. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to paraphrase here and broadcast a response. There we go. There's a question. So the next question is, who would be the best person to contact in Michigan to get a comprehensive list of all your hardware and software? I'm going to point that not to Michigan because I don't think it's a person. I'm going to point that one to Brian Cawley because he can mention what's being done for the peer exchanges.
Yeah, your question that came up has been coming up in our peer exchanges, as well as it's been coming up from our federal lands offices who are piloting different devices and such. I would encourage you to go to the Federal Highway Construction, eConstruction Peer Exchange website, and we have copies of our peer exchanges posted there. Please take a look at them, review their answers. You'll see different devices and different software products that are being used out in the field, and in summary, we're not promoting one over the other, as they all have their values and shortcomings, and each state is choosing what works best for them.
Thanks, Brian. And I'm going to let the folks from Michigan comment, since that was what the question was about. But before I do, I just want to point out to everybody, I've changed the screen layout, and what you should see in the middle at the top now is a web links pod, and you can click on those topics, and then the URL will come up and you can browse to it. It will open in another window. You don't have to do it now. I'm going to leave the room in this state, and these links will all be accessible from the recording. So just to walk you through what we've got there, the first one is the eConstruction Today website, where if we don't post the recordings there, we'll certainly post a link to them there. The next one down is the Federal Highways eConstruction website that that Brian talked about. So if the recordings don't go on the eConstruction Today site, they'll go on the Federal Highways site. The next one down is Michigan's eConstruction Wiki. So there's plenty of good information there. And then the fourth one down, you're probably all going to want that one. That's the PDH data entry form. So if you want to get your PDH certificate, you need to click on that link and go there. I'll bring it up again at the end. But that's where you're going to enter your name and email address to receive your PDH certificate.
This is Cliff.
The one below that is what
I'd
Brian
like
is
to make one quick
specifically
comment.
mentioning, those peer exchange
I so much
reports.
appreciate that question,
That's where
because
those
there
are.
were things
There's two
that
up
we
so far,
knew
another one
were
going
in
up
place
soon, and then
that would
the
not
fourth
be
one
adequate when we
is
start
underway
coming in
right
over
now.
the top of them
And then
with
we've got a
all
direct
this
link to the
electronic
Florida DOT
documentation.
eConstruction
And
how-to
so we
guide that
told the
I
IT
think Brian
people
mentioned
that
earlier,
with
and
the
then the
solution that
brochure
we've got,
plan
we need a hole
for
in
this
the
webinar
firewall,
series.
and we needed
The
the
next,
computers
okay,
at
so
our,
over to you
the
guys
networks,
in
I should
Michigan, if
say,
you
at
want to
our
comment
construction offices
any
around the state
beyond what
to
Brian
be up
said.
to snuff, so that people weren't sitting there looking at screens and waiting 35 seconds for every document to come up, those kind of things. So the question is very valid, and when you roll this out, you want to be very, very successful, and one of the ways to knock it down in a hurry is that they have very slow throughput on the user side. So the question's a valid one and has to be addressed before we go to eConstruction. I don't know, Brad, did you have something as well?
And then not a whole lot to add from the Michigan perspective, but just wanted to kind of reiterate the AASHTO position paper really does talk about IT and technology implementation being a big hurdle that we got to get through. But like Cliff said, we put a lot of time and effort into it and understood that if you don't have the right tools to implement this, you're going to have limited success.
Yes, sir. Well, Michigan is a field manager state, and field manager just kicks out documentation. Either you can print it or you can print it as a PDF. And so we didn't have any issues that way going to eConstruction, but I'm not familiar with the site manager, although I am on the team, site manager, field manager team, to rewrite and combine both products out on the web.
Next question,
But
somebody
I'm
mentioned
not
a
familiar with the site
compatibility issue
manager
with Site Manager.
problem.
So if you could just elaborate perhaps a little more on that.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned it, but one of the things about Site Manager is that the databases reside behind our firewall. They're not outside and easily accessible. So what we use is a product called Citrix, and the users log in through Citrix, and they actually go to a computer that's inside the firewall on a farm, and they log in there and do their Site Manager data entry and
Doug,
things
was
like
it
that.
you who mentioned it?
So really, I haven't had any issues with interfacing with Site Manager.
Thanks, Doug. I know that Texas is a big Site Manager state. Brian, do you know if they are using it from the field?
I'm sorry, I don't know, but I do know we have state profiles of all our lead states that were
Yes, there's a fair amount, and I'm unfortunately not a RID expert, but
you can look up and see
the
the different platforms that lead states are using.
the documents to say Michigan is 100% paperless right now isn't quite
Thank
fair.
you.
We're
There's a
99.95.
question, actually
We still
there's a
have
couple
delivery
questions.
tickets. We're looking for a
Other than
solution on
PDF
the
plans, what kind
delivery
of design
tickets
files
to
have
get
been
those
released to
electronic.
inspectors and contractors? There's a
But
couple
it's
other questions on
everything
that
else,
theme.
you know, shop drawings, which isn't really part of the RID, and all that is
I don't
absolutely
know,
paperless.
Cliff, if you
I don't
want
know
to
if
start,
maybe,
since I know that
you know,
Michigan has
Brad or
policy
Stu
for RID.
might want to chip in on that one. On
Yeah,
the
I
RID
can
side.
talk.
Thanks,
I can
Brad.
talk about that. No
Yeah.
problem, Cliff.
Thanks.
Michigan, when we advertise our projects, obviously everything's advertised electronically. Contractors can still download plans and specifications, PDF format. That's our contractual document. But we also have a section of the advertisement for reference information documents, RID. In there, we put, oh boy, we put in DGN files, we put in terrain files, we'll put in XML files for line strings and whatnot. So we give the contractor as much electronic information that we can at time of bidding, or prior to bidding, at time of advertisement, so they can sharpen their pencils. The RID does have a disclaimer when they enter the website to say that it's non-contractual and cannot be the basis of a claim. But we're developing this electronic information. Why not share it? Why not make it available to the contractors for them to put the best bid together possible? I mean, our vision, my vision as a design guy, is that the models and that information becomes the contract document. So we're kind of at an intermediate step right now where we're providing it, but at this time it's not contractual.
Great. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we do the same thing that Michigan does by placing the files and making them available to the contractors. And we fully intend to put the things on the SharePoint site that they would need in order to generate machine guidance or something like that from it. But we have the same disclaimer that needs to go in it as well.
Thank you. Doug, did you have anything to comment from Florida's perspective?
Okay. What happened is when we got into this was we found out that our CAD development section, which are the ones responsible
there was
for
a
receiving
question
the
about the
delivered
digital
plan sets
signatures.
from designers
So
across
Oregon
the,
requires a
across
level
the
2
regions.
security digital signature that costs
And what they had
$165
done
per year.
recently
So
was
what
migrated
software
from
is
an
only
electronic
$100 for
delivery
2 years?
to a
There was a
digital
link
delivery.
shared in the chat, but
And in
did you
doing
want to
so,
mention
they had
anything
already
in addition to that link to your
sought
website,
out
Doug?
the best price for the best, certificate authority. And it turned out that the one that we use here at DOT is the one that's $100 for 2 years. And that company name is Identrust. And I think their website is identrust.com. But what they do is if, for example, you have a certificate authority that pays certain fees to Microsoft, for example, to post and publish their authentication public keys, then Microsoft does that with the patches that go out for Windows operating system. This company does not send it through Microsoft. They provide it themselves. So it's incumbent upon the users to download the public key and put it into and install it on their own machines. And it's worth the cost, if you ask me. That's the reason why Florida does it. the department.
Yeah, I would say so as well. And just to be clear, we're talking electronic documents. The data's on its way, but we're talking electronic documents. But yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks, Doug. There's a couple questions on who is the ultimate owner of the electronic data. Anyone?
Oh, I love the answer to that one. That's a great question. I sincerely, that's one thing that we would love to get cured here in Michigan.
Thank you.
We're looking for solutions as well.
All right. Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here. I cannot
Well,
get rid of the hyperlinks,
we're in the same
so
boat
I
as
apologize
Michigan,
for all the
and one of the
hyperlinks in
things
these
we're
comments.
exploring is QCR,
Right, push that out.
which
Okay.
if you take a picture of
There's
the,
a question, are any states
of the
paying off
delivery
neat
ticket.
lines and doing away with the need for delivery
QCR
tickets?
process will read the thing and convert it into a text file, but it's kind of way out there right now. Another solution that we've been looking at is using barcodes or QR codes that would be put on the delivery ticket by the provider.
Doug, how about in Florida?
But then you have to get with them and get them to do that for you. So, you know, solution is probably coming. We just don't have it yet.
Right. Brian, have you seen anything else with the other states? I know Kat has mentioned something about Iowa.
There's been discussions about this at every peer exchange we've had so far. And states are experimenting with different things, like Doug brought up in Florida. North Dakota has a daily summary log sheet or something they're using, as well as there's a new product that Iowa has been working with. There's no answer or solution at this point in time. Please keep your eye on those peer exchange reports, as they do talk about these issues quite extensively and what is happening nationally. I'd expect a new peer exchange report every month to be posted on that website. Iowa's peer exchange is supposed to happen in December, where Iowa and North Dakota is getting together, and it takes about a month to generate the report and get it posted. So hopefully mid-January we'll
as far as I know,
have that report
at this
to share
point,
with
we haven't
everybody.
had any issues, but it might just be that the projects that we're piloting aren't large enough to cause that problem.
Thanks,
So,
Brian.
but
There's a question
I can
about using
imagine
iPads
that
in
if you
Florida.
sent a 1,000-page PDF plan set
Were there
to
ever
that
any issues
machine,
with
it would
not having
probably
enough
choke it
storage
down.
for all the contract documents that you need at one time? And also, did
And
not
as
having
far
a
as
USB
not having
port
a
ever
USB
stop your
port, I think they
availability,
have
your
other
ability to
ways
transfer a
to get
document
data
to
from
someone
a
else in the
machine.
field if there
If I'm
wasn't
not
service?
mistaken, it's an Apple, like a FireWire or something like that. Yeah, I think you could use Bluetooth, but, you know, it'd be better to have wire if you could get it.
No, Chuz, we are not. We did have a committee that, as a matter of fact, Stu was on that committee. Stuart Loxell here in Michigan was on that committee. They went through and they looked at the different technology that was available. This is probably 6 months ago.
Like a way
We're
to
still using the iPads in the field, and for the time being that we can foresee, we'll still be using the iPads for our inspection forces. That being said, I sure would love to have a Windows tablet. We're a Windows shop. Our inspectors have to have knowledge on 2 different operating systems, which probably isn't bad for them, but probably creates a little bit of needless hesitation at first. We've been wanting the tablet for a long time, but they're just not there yet. Whether you can't see them in the sunshine, whether they're fragile, whether they don't have 4G, whether they're not picking up your geospatial information. There's just been we've been hit a lot of walls, and so we're still using the iPads. As far as field sizes is concerned, one of the contracts that we ran was a huge contract. We call it a mega contract down in Detroit. They had very intensive activities going on down there, and we never heard anything about the initial load's going to take some time, right? But once you got it there, it's pretty quick to go to where you need to go. And that's a one-time thing. In most cases, you will have some plan updates, but as far as exchanging documents between people, if it's a document that's in its final stage, we're a Bentley state, and so we have ProjectWise. The one inspector posted ProjectWise. It's available for everybody else to look. ProjectWise isn't maybe your best collaboration tool, and so we are using SharePoint as well to be able to collaborate during a document's process, and then once that document gets done, and I'm not talking like a formal document like a change order. Change order goes right into ProjectWise so that we can track the audit trail, but I'm talking about just the daily activities out there, and it's worked out very well. They have, for the life of me, I can't remember. The answer is yes. There's an Adobe product that they use on the iPads. Typically, iPads, for example, if you want to use a digitally encrypted electronic signature in Adobe, it isn't going to work on an iPad, so you have to come up with a different solution.
On an iOS device, and if so, are there specific iOS apps that you use, or is it through your document management tools?
Envious of Doug in Florida because they're already set and going on that. The solutions that we took, because we hit the ground running so fast, is we got something that would work, but it's not going to be the ultimate solution for Michigan as far as digitally encrypted electronic signatures.
You're talking about for submitting documents with the iPad through an application? Okay, I got it. What we did here was we created pre-filled forms and put them on our SharePoint site. Example being every one of our forms have all of the superfluous information on them that are relative to the project itself.
What are you using,
like the
Doug?
Financial codes and, the people that are on the project, the vendor numbers and stuff like that. We've been pre-filling those and then placing them on the project sites. So when a person needs to fill
filling
one
inspection
out,
forms,
they download it to their device or their PC or whatever, and they fill it out using the PDF tool. We're having issues with being able to sign those on the iPad, and we've been working directly with Apple trying to get a solution through them to allow us to do that. But in the other areas, we found a tool called QPDF. It was an app for Android that allows you to download a certificate and use it to sign documents. And you can also use in the PC environment, the PDF reader will allow you to sign using a digital certificate. But so far, the Apple hasn't come forth yet for us.
Anybody on the call really must listen to Doug, what he's talking about right now. I was in Florida several months ago now. He caught me in the hall. He says, "You got time to talk business?" And I said, "Yes." We went into his office, and he showed me how they were pre-filling those forms. Now, in Michigan, it's still way better than making out all that header information every day on every document. What they'll do is they'll create a template file and put all the documents in there. They'll fill out the headers all by hand. They'll put them in there. So anytime they have to use them, they'll just pull them out, fill them out, save them off, put them into project-wise. But what Doug's talking about is impressive because they don't have to do that anymore. In Florida, when they get those documents, all the concrete documents, all your density stuff, your HMAs, whatever it is, they go, and Doug's team's got them, and Doug has already got that header information automatically pre-filled for them. That was really a cool solution, Doug. I just enjoyed that. Michigan's got to get there too.
Appreciate that. Those are kind words.
It's cool stuff. It really is. Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Brian, there's a question that says, is there any idea of if and when it may be federally mandated to be paperless? So since you are our friendly Fed on the line.
I'm not aware of any such mandate. However, we do have some different laws and policies that have been passed associated with the federal government operating in an electronic environment. So there have been things that have basically told the federal government to advance the use of electronics.
Thank you.
Just a personal note.
The feds are not telling
Correct.
people to
And
do
actually,
this, right?
the
They're
policy
just
that we
supporting
refer to,
implementation.
Was written back in
Bottom line.
1989 on how we are accepting and supporting the use of electronic project management systems that have integrity and security amongst them. And we started back then when we just started the journey on electronic advertising of projects.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. There are a couple. We still have just a slew of questions to get through, so I'm going to start grouping them into kind of themes here. And I want to get back to the electronic 3D data. And some of the questions that are coming up are, so in an eConstruction project, in terms of communicating the design, are plans still created in an electronic form, or is it just the model that's submitted? Now, I'm not going to point that to our speakers because so we're talking eConstruction today. There's also 3D modeling, and from that perspective, which Brian and I are both involved in, there have been a couple pilot projects, and there are some states that intend to do some more pilot projects with models superseding plans,
Presently,
and Utah plans to
before
do
we
a
get in
couple
full
with,
swing
or they're
using
working towards a
eConstruction,
couple with the
we've
model
been
instead of plans.
having
But
PDF
right now we're
plan
very much in
sets
a
that go
domain
out to the
with
field, and they
plans
mark
are
them
the
up by
contract
hand
documents, models are
with a red
reference
pencil.
documents. But then there's
So
some
when they
questions
turn
are
in their
asking
as-bills,
about
they
as-builting
come
and
to the
record
office and they're put
retention.
in a box
So
and slid
what
over
are your
against the
current
wall.
processes for
So when
as-builts?
they do the final
And
payout
how
on
long
the
are you
project
retaining
and they
records
package up
for?
all
And
the
are you
information to go to
intending to go
archive,
with as-built models
um,
as records?
we
Start
presently
with
have a
Doug.
company that does scanning for us, and we ship the final plans as they are marked up to this company, and they scan them for us, and then they send them back to us over FTP connection. And then once we verify that they're valid, the validity of the files, they destroy the paper copies. So, but the retention process for those, I think, is standard for all of our projects. As-builts, I don't think ever go away. But some of the other document information would go away after 3 years, and some of it has a 5-year retention period. It really depends on what the document is.
Yes, there's as-builts are the same status here in Michigan as many of the other states that I've talked to. Our as-built process is very much manual,
Okay, thank you.
but
Sorry, I
now
was
that we're breaking
answering a
into
question in the
this
chat there. So your
unmanual age,
retention
there are
is
digital
5
pens
years?
that people are trying on their PDF
How about
plans
you,
to mark
Doug?
them up.
Can you comment?
Bluebeam is a fantastic solution for doing exactly that and tracking the as-constructs and the plan changes on 2D plan set, essentially, that you can turn on and turn off layers if you just want to see the removal items or you just want to see the utilities, whatever the case might be. So we're right on the verge of having a really cool solution to as-built that we did not have in the past, and therefore our as-built in the past, sometimes we're okay, and sometimes we're not okay. I don't know, Brad, did you have something to say about the as-built as well?
Nothing a whole lot more about the process that you mentioned.
Okay.
It's still somewhat of a manual
Alrighty.
process that we do scan
Yes.
as well and bring them back in like Florida did. But I think this kind of speaks to a bigger discussion outside of this, is about civil integrated management as a whole, and how we take this data and actually continue it electronically through the life cycle. So I don't want to get into a lot of that here with this discussion, but I think we have a ways to go with what we do with as-built and how we create them and how we manage them throughout the data life cycle.
Excellent point, Brad. Excellent. Absolutely.
Francesca, I need to add, the plan that Florida has to do that is exactly what Cliff described. We're going to use Bluebeam to do the markups, and so therefore the scanning process will go away. Then the paper process will go away. Using Bluebeam, I think the name of it is Bluebeam Review. I haven't seen them using them in the real world per se, but they have downloaded some to see how they look. But they're not actively taking them and using them to do business, if you know what I mean.
Yep. Okay. Just sticking on the CAD data theme, has anybody been using MicroStation files on portable devices? All
You want me to go first?
right. Bentley just released their app this month, so I'm sure that's an area that will expand.
My
And
cohort
then
here, our colleague
there's an Autodesk
Amy
app that I know
Toole
Rochelle was
is actually
trying
on the
out, but I
FHWA
don't think it ever
committee.
got into production in Michigan.
She reported to the group about the different types of employees that we have, across the board.
Has there been much
Baby
resistance
boomers
from
and,
employees when switching to
millennials and all
paperless,
that kind of
since there
stuff.
are newer technologies
What
such as the
we
cloud and
have
other
been
file sharing
discovering is that the
systems?
newer folks, like the millennials, are just soaking it up like a sponge. And they love it.
Sure.
And they can't wait to get their hands on it.
It's your therapy time.
But then you have other folks that are old-timers like myself that are afraid to take that step. But bottom line, I think before it's over with, it's going to fly like, it's going to go. This is the wave of the future, and it's upon us.
I can't add anything more than what Doug just said. This is absolutely true. In Michigan, we've got a workforce in the field that next 5 years we're going to be having lots of retirements. If people are going to come in and see archaic business processes when they have a passion for the technology, then we're going to have trouble keeping those people. The things that we're getting kicked into gear right now are absolutely essential, like Doug was saying. We have to do this,
Cliff, it's your therapy
and we'll get
now.
there because it's fun, it gets things done way more efficiently, and it can capture the attention of not only getting people here, but keeping them here to retain our core competencies here at MDOT as well. It's going to be a huge issue here. You're welcome. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm reading some of these questions. trying to make sure. Oh, we've only got 2 minutes left. So, one very quick question about your document management. Are you able to accurately track who has done the submittals? Does it track who? Okay. All right. Yes. All right. Okay. I'm just going to jump back. Oops. I'm sorry I didn't bring up the polls. We had too many questions to get through, and those were more important than redoing the polls. So just your evaluation questions here quickly. And if you did not get to the PDH form, I will pull that back up in a minute after the webinar.